Valley's Gold is produced through a partnership between the Fresno County Farm Bureau and Valley PBS. Production of this program is made possible in part by a grant from E&J Gallo Winery.
Agriculture. It's the economic engine that drives this region. On this episode of Valley's Gold, we're taking a look at the local dairy industry. So join me, Ryan Jacobsen, on this utterly fantastic adventure. We're starting our day out in Easton in rural Fresno County at the John DeGroat and Son Dairy. With me I have three family members, Pete, Charlie, and Jonathan. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having us. Ryan.
I want to start with the very rich family history in the dairy industry. Pete, why don't you start off with that?
Well, we've been here for 40 years this year. We're still the new guys on the block because we moved here 40 years ago and all the farmers around us are still here, like your family. And so we are still the new guys on the block. Our history is that I'm second generation, third generation in America. But it goes back to Holland, where my dad immigrated from. And so with my great-grandfather, we're actually fourth and fifth generation dairy people right now.
And when you talk about your dairy, 40 years in the business, it's not always been here in Fresno County. Where did you originally start off at?
My dad immigrated from Holland in 1948. He started milking cows. 1950, he started his own dairy in Artesia, California, and I always say by Knott's Berry Farm, which is no longer dairy. And then 5 years later, he moved to the Chino Valley, which was a very rich dairy area, and stayed there till 1973.
One of the fun parts of your guys' farm is that you cover everything from the feed to the time that the cow's being milked. Jonathan, you cover a lot of the feed side. What does it take to feed these animals?
Well, here at our farm, we're able to grow all our forage needs for our cows. Our forages include alfalfa hay, corn silage, and winter forage, which is oats and wheat and barley. And so we have a whole nother farming side of the dairy, which is really key to feeding the cows. We're able to get 8 to 9 cuttings of hay every year that we bale all ourselves, and every summer we grow the corn, and we chop that in September and make silage piles where the feed ferments and is stored for the winter, and then in the springtime we cut our cereal grains. So those are the things we grow here on our farm.
And it's also, you're relying upon bringing in some additional feed for the grain component of it.
That's right. Just like a big salad, you put in the lettuce first and then you put all the goodies on top of it. We have to rely on byproducts and concentrated grains to make the mix nutritionally complete. Locally, we're able to get such things as almond hulls or cottonseed and blend those into our mixes for the cows.
That's one of the amazing things about Central Valley agriculture is really nothing goes to waste. We do use so many of these byproducts for these types of animal feeding. Charlie, from the time that he makes the feed to the time it ends up in the dairy, talk about how that feed makes the milk.
Well, we have several different rations that we feed. So we take all those feed ingredients that they're growing on the farm and we're purchasing, and we formulate a ration. And we formulate a ration based on what the cows are producing. And so we feed about 4 different feed rations to these cows. We group those cows accordingly to those rations, and we can produce, on average, these cows are producing about 78 pounds of milk per day based on what those rations are formulated to. And 78 pounds equates to about 9 gallons per cow per day. So we milk them twice a day. So they're on average given about 4.5 gallons each milking.
What exactly is the process for that milk to then end up at the processing plant?
Well, the only thing we do here on the farm is harvest the milk. We chill it down to about 38 degrees and store it in tanks, and on a daily basis, the milk truck comes and picks that up and takes it to the processor where they'll pasteurize and process the milk into the great dairy products that you guys see on the shelves.
And talk about the actual milking process itself. How does that take place, and what exactly, talk about the labor supply that's needed to make sure these animals are properly taken care of.
Yeah, good point, Ryan. The milking barn, the cows come in there in a group with other cows that are the same production level. They come into the barn, about 20 cows at a time. The labor force in the barn, there's 3 guys that work in there. They attach the machines to the cows. They first check each cow, make sure the milk is pure. They attach the machine to these cows. The machine actually automatically milks the cow and senses when the milk flow stops, and then automatically comes off the cow when she's done. Then we post-dip the cow with a disinfectant to prevent any bacteria from entering her udder. While that cow was at the barn being milked, the feed bunk where she eats was cleaned, just like washing dishes. It gets cleaned, so they have a clean plate. Fresh food was dropped. The beds that they lay in were cleaned out. Any moistened material was cleaned out and raked smooth again. So when they come back to their corral, they have a comfortable place to lay, comfortable place to eat, fresh drinking water.
Charlie, how important is water to the operation?
It's extremely important. Milk is 87% water, so it's important for us to provide clean, fresh drinking water in abundance to all these dairy cattle.
And one thing about a family dairy, it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365-day in operation. Talk a little bit about what it takes to keep these animals comfortable, number one, year-round, and number two, what it takes as a family to run an operation.
Well, here in Fresno, we have a little bit milder climate than back in the Midwest, but you know, our summers still get pretty warm. And so, as we talked about, cow comfort is key to producing a good product. So here at our dairy, we do a number of things to keep these cows comfortable in the heat. They have here, we're standing in the freestall where they can always be under shade. We have fans in place in every freestall. When the temperature reaches above 85 degrees, those fans automatically come right on. No one even has to turn them on. Above their eating area, we have soakers. Again, where the temperature gets to a certain level, it'll spray all over the backs of the cows, and that way they're cool all day long.
And you guys are, again, out here just every single day of the year. These cows don't stop eating and they don't stop being milked.
That's right. Cows never take off for Christmas, and neither do we. Being a family farm, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure that these cows are getting cared for every day. And you know, we have employees who help us with that, but still ultimately our responsibility. So you know, everybody wants Christmas off, so we're usually the ones that are running around here on Christmas or Sunday morning. All three of us are cruising around doing the jobs that need to get done.
I want to finish up with Pete, the family operation aspect of this. Obviously, you have had the opportunity to work with your dad for many, many years, and now you got your two sons in the operation. Talk about how you make that work and how important that is to you.
Well, I think that's a great question because it's all about passing it on to the next generation. And you hear that a lot in the farming industry about creating a legacy for your family and for the next generation. And I've had that opportunity with my father, and now I have that opportunity with my sons. And one of the things that my dad did right away was to get us into the partnership. And these boys are in the partnership and probably own more of it than I do. But that's what it is. And now they're preparing for the next generation, for their children, to take part in this if they so choose. We had the choice. We weren't forced into it. This is something we love and we want to do, and we continue to do that as a family. And that includes our wives. We didn't talk a lot about that, but they're an integral part of this whole farming operation.
Well, good. I want to thank you guys so much. It's been an incredible opportunity to come out here and visit the cows. We're actually headed off now to learn a little bit about the history of the Central Valley dairy industry.
Thanks, man.
I've been joined by Elizabeth Lavelle, who's brought some historical photos to share with us. Elizabeth, thanks for joining me.
Oh, Ryan, we have so many interesting early dairy pictures. You know, by the 1880s, a number of family-owned and operated dairies supplied the county with all the milk and different products that they needed. So we have some pictures today. First, I love this photo. Just a mama and a baby. It's so sweet. But these are all about 1918, and people often ask, wow, these animals look so different than they do today. And you know, the feed was different, the environment was different. They weren't so concerned with letting them have as much exercise as they needed. And so they definitely have been different. But you can tell this poor gal was ready to get her milk taken care of. You know, she sure was. So if that was the case, probably they would have used a machine like this. Now, this was the Thornton Menard Ranch, and they were using something called an Empire milking machine, and this was taken about 1918. So what we've seen today is the most modern equipment Well, in 1918, this was the most modern equipment, so much so that they asked Bob Laval to go out and take a photo of it, so to really commemorate that. But we know already that the kinds of sanitation and things that we were watching today really weren't concerns at that time. There were lots of immigrants, people were settling here, and really they were just thirsty. They wanted something besides water and wine to drink. So this is why the milk industry really evolved here. One of the places that we remember from this area is the nation's oldest processing cooperative, which came in the mid-1880s by Danish immigrants. That would be the Danish Creamery Association, and they actually introduced the Holstein Friesian breed here in the valley. It's something that's still used today.
Absolutely.
They actually had horse-drawn milk wagons. We're so worried about refrigeration and getting the milk there. Well, heck, they just put it in the cart and they took it to the creamery, and they actually were at Inyo and East Street here in Fresno. This was taken about in 1911, but they also took the wagons and they delivered them to homes. Kind of a fun thing. Here you can see now they started to convert to cars.
Yep.
But my very favorite Danish Creamery picture is this of the Danish Creamery truck in front of the old Fresno courthouse. This too was about 1920, maybe a little bit sooner than that. I love this picture. You know what they're making right here?
It looks like butter, but I'm not sure.
It's butter. That Danish Creamery plant made almost 6,000 pounds of butter a day. If you can imagine, back in 1911, and this is the blockhouse where they cut the butter and then they would take it and deliver it. And of course, butter wasn't used to being in little blocks.
Yeah.
So when they actually put that together, what did they do? They went to the Fresno Fair, where everything good was introduced always, and they had a Danish Creamery booth, and they were giving samples out of the smaller packaging for butter. Just like sliced bread, it all was introduced to our area at the Fresno Fair. The other area that's really fun in this section, we had the largest ice cream factory in California at one time. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
No, and it was called Benham Ice Cream, and it really was one of the most modern in the entire United States. They put out over 5,000 gallons of ice cream a day.
Well, that's how they kept cool back in the old days.
They did. And what I love the story that in the Wilson Theater, which is downtown, they used to advertise in 1926 that the air conditioner came from the Benham ice cream plant. They'd pump the air out of the plant and into the theater, and that's how they had air conditioning. All of the milk that they used was purchased from local dairies, and they used 500 gallons of cream a day.
Wow.
And 4,000 pounds of sugar, which came from Visalia, each week. They had 32 people on their payroll in 1915, and they ran an annual payroll. Guess how much their annual payroll was?
I'm
$15,000. Big, big money in the economy at that time. I want to close this segment today with one of my very favorite pictures. We talked earlier a little bit, we were talking about happy cows from California based on what they eat. I really think this photo from Merced has to be the origination of happy cows. Look at these cows smiling here. They were happy.
Yep.
They were out in there and they were making great milk for everybody. Just part of the dairy industry that really spread across our valley. It's fun to take a look back.
Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for sharing this black and white history. I look forward to learning more in future episodes. We've moved on down the road to Rosa Brothers Milk Company in Tulare. With me, I have Noel Rosa, one of the owners. Noel, thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Well, first off, let's start off a little bit about your family's history and when you guys got in the milk industry.
Okay. Well, our family has a long tradition in the dairy industry. We have been on the same location since 1949, and we officially started milking cows in the business that we have today. We call 1953. That was the year that my father came back from Korea, and my father and mother married and started in a partnership with my grandparents on that site. So 1953 was our official start date.
Wow, okay. And now when we're actually in your store, your retail component of your store, but we actually have the milk processing facility right behind us, that's a brand new adventure for you guys.
That is correct. We started processing milk here in September of 2012. So just over a year, we've actually been processing our own milk here on site in Tulare.
Well, your actual facility here is absolutely amazing. Let's talk about building this facility and what you had in mind when you put it all together.
Well, I think we've accomplished our goal here, and that was to make a small-scale, artisan-type milk processing facility, something like a microbrewery type thing, except for dairy products, so the public can actually come in and view the processing portion of the dairy industry, and then actually have a retail outlet where they can buy fresh dairy products that are being processed right here on site.
And let's talk about the actual processing that you do here. What does it take to make these products?
It's pretty involved, actually. We have our own small tanker that we take over to the farm. The farm is about 15 miles away from here. We load up the milk there as it's being milked right from the cows. We load it up, we bring it over here, then we put it in our raw silo, and we test the milk as it comes in, and then we take the milk out of the raw silo and we'll either process it as whole milk, and we'll pasteurize it, homogenize it, and put it in the tank ready for bottling, or we'll actually run it through a separator and we'll separate out the cream from the skim milk, and then we use the skim milk to make skim milk, reduced fat milk, and then we'll also use the cream to make ice cream, or we'll add it back in with a whole milk to make half and half and products such as that. So depending on the butterfat content of the product, we vary the amount of cream in all the different products.
The amazing part of this is it is a family operation, and you have the brother that's involved. Do you kind of take care of the facility side of it, and your brother takes care of the dairy side of it?
Yes, my brother and I, we meet every morning and we kind of discuss what things are going on our side of the operation, but he primarily spends his days at the farm and I primarily spend my days here. My wife is the office manager at the farm, and all of our accounting and bookkeeping runs through the farm office, so she's over there. My sister-in-law Nicole is our sales and marketing person, and she works here at the plant as well, so we really are a family operation.
And the one last thing I want to talk about before we get to go taste these products is the part of where you really got to launch your product, and that was the Fresno Food Expo, where you guys really became known as kind of a household name up and down the valley. Give a little bit about your experience.
The Fresno Food Expo was great. That was about the 6-month marker for our 6th month of processing, and it was very interesting because they have a category for new products, and since our plant was new, everything we make was a new product, so we entered in glass bottled milk, which encompassed all of our flavors. And when the public had the opportunity to come in and taste our products and then cast their vote for which of the new products, and I believe there was over 50 new products in all different categories of agriculture. We gathered the most votes, and we actually came home with a trophy, and we have it sitting in our retail store.
Well, let's go taste these trophy products then.
Okay.
So we have it set up here on the counter. Let's talk a little bit about what products we have in front of us. Let's start there right nearest closest to you.
Okay. Well, this is one of our more unusual products. This is root beer milk. This tastes like a root beer float. So if you can imagine a root beer float where you put the vanilla ice cream and then you pour the root beer over the top, and as you're eating the ice cream, there's that last little sip where the ice cream is melted and it's kind of thick and creamy.
Absolutely.
And then it has the root beer taste. That's what this is. This is a root beer float in a bottle.
And it has a very different texture to it than normal milk, what we're used to there. You can smell the root beer before you even taste it, and yes, it's just like as you explained there, so it's absolutely amazing. So next we see we have an orange flavored.
Now this is what we call orange cream milk. Now the funny thing about orange cream is a lot of our customers call it orange dream. So that's been the new thing. The orange dream, if you remember, they were very popular back in the 60s and 70s and even into the 80s, and they're still made today. It was like a sherbet bar, orange sherbet, and it had vanilla ice cream in the middle.
Yep.
That's what this is. This tastes exactly like that. Some people call them 50-50 bar, some people call them a dreamsicle, but this is orange dream.
Exactly like the popsicles I remember as a kid. And then we move on, chocolate milk, strawberry milk. Well,
these are more of the traditional flavors. This is our strawberry milk. This is our chocolate milk. They're very unique strawberries and chocolates. I'm sure that if you've never had them, you'll notice there's a big difference from other milks on the market. It is made with whole milk, so this is whole milk.
And the last thing I'm going to wrap up with here is actually coming down here. Didn't even know you guys were in the ice cream business also. We have one of many flavors that you offer here, but it's coconut and chocolate. Explain a little bit about that.
This is one of our newest flavors, coconut and chocolate, and it probably tastes like a candy bar that you've had before.
Very familiar candy bar, and quite honestly, this is completely different than any other ice cream I've ever had.
We make another flavor called almond and honey, and that's kind of a nod to the almond industry because the almond trees are pollinated with the bees. So we put the honey from the local bees in with the local almonds, in with the local milk and cream from our farm, and it's a totally local product.
You got the whole process covered.
Yeah.
And you said it tastes like a candy bar. I'll actually tell you it tastes better than that candy bar. So this is phenomenal. So I want to thank you so much, Noel. This has been a heck of an experience. Just amazing to see your facility. I enjoyed it, and I want to thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for coming.
We've headed north up the Los Banos to visit Peluso Cheese. With me I have owner Rene Reynoso. Rene, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Ryan.
Well, Rene, let's first start off. This organization has a very rich history. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the Pelusos started the Peluso cheese plant back in 1917, and they started it in Pleasanton, California. Then they moved south. They came here to Los Banos, and they opened up this cheese plant back in 1932. And so this plant has been around since 1932, and they've been putting out quality cheeses ever since.
That's incredible to think back to the Depression era, and that's when they first moved here.
Right.
Your family's been involved in this since 2005.
Yes, my family purchased the plant back in 2005. The Pelusos were retiring, they were older, and so we got into the picture back in 2005.
Well, let's talk about your cheese making that goes on here. I was just incredibly impressed when I walked through the door and just saw the magic of cheese making happening. Let's start when the milk originally starts here. One of the fun facts that you told me is some of the milk comes from just as close as 5 miles away.
Yes, it comes from 5 miles away all the way to 50 miles away. So milk doesn't separate because it's so close, because milk has the tendency to separate when it's in the tanker trucks.
Got it. So they bring it here within a relatively short proximity and it ends up in your tanks. How does the cheese get made from there?
Well, it ends up in our tanks. We test the milk, and all of our milk is California milk. And so it is sent to our silos. From our silos, it's sent to our pasteurizer. We pasteurize all of our milk. We send it to our double O tanks. From our double O tanks, we send it to our finishing tables, where our forkers stir, the curds to separate the weight.
The finishing tables were quite the process. That was one of my favorite parts of the visit here. Talk exactly what happens to that whey, how it's getting separated, and how the cheese goes on to the next step.
Well, what the forkers do, they agitate the actual curds, and so it separates the whey from the curds. So what we try and do is have the cheese curds in a very dry state, and then we add our salt to it.
So no whey. You don't want any whey in that. You're separating the whey off, and then you end up with some of the finished product. And talk about what is some of those finished products. You make a whole lot of different variety of cheeses here. What is some of the varieties?
Yeah, well, we make 12 different types of cheeses.
Wow.
We make Monterey Jack, we make mozzarella, we make a couple of varieties of the Hispanic cheeses, the queso fresco, the queso panela, queso cotija, queso chontaleño, queso para freír, and then we also make our famous Talamay cheese.
And one of the fun processes that I learned, we're actually standing here in your freezer, is that some of the cheeses are ready to go out the next day. Others are aged for some quite amount of time.
Right. All of our drier cheeses are aged from a week to 3 weeks. But then we also make our specialty fresh cheeses that we can make them today and sell them tomorrow.
Got it. Okay, well, perfect, Rene. This has been an incredible experience. I thank you so much for having me here today, and I can't wait to taste some of this cheese.
Oh, okay, great, Ryan. Thank you
so much.
All right.
I've sought out the big cheese here at Peluso. With me I have head cheesemaker Hugo Ortega. Hugo, thanks for having me here today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Well, Hugo, let's start a little bit. How'd you get started in the cheese business?
I started working since I was 19 years old in this business, and I just started my way up, going up, and learning stuff, and now I'm the head cheesemaker here at Peluso.
You told me you've been at this for a little over 17 years.
17 years, yes.
That's a long time to be making cheese, so I'm
Yes.
sure you've learned a lot along the way.
Oh, yes, right.
Well, tell me, cheese making looks like it's a very difficult process. Tell me what you think the most difficult part of it is.
The most difficult part of the process is having a high quality product. That's what the most difficult part of the whole process is.
To you, what sets Peluso apart from other cheeses?
Right here we have the teleme, and we have a history. We have good quality cheese.
And then let me finish off with your favorite cheese. What's your favorite kind you enjoy that you make here?
My favorite kind is the teleme.
And do you eat it by itself or do you eat it with something else?
You can eat it with crackers, or you can melt it on top of your dishes, whatever. It's a really good melting cheese.
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much, Hugo. I really appreciate you showing me around. Well, we milked this episode for all it's worth. I hope you'll join me next time for more Valley's Gold.
Valley's Gold is produced through a partnership between the Fresno County Farm Bureau and Valley PBS. Production of this program is made possible in part by a grant from E&J Gallo Winery.